everyone, I'm here today to talk you through some of my favourite reads at school. So at school it's really terrible. You're thinking, oh my god, I've been set this book to read, or at university you're like, oh my god, I've got like 50 books to read in the next few weeks and I'm not going to enjoy any of them. But the truth is that sometimes you might enjoy some of them. They're not all terrible. I've got a huge stack here of some of my favourite books that I had to study either at school or university. These are in no particular order, they're just literally in the pile that I've managed to pull them off my shelves in. So first of all, here we have The Remains of the Day by Kazuro Ishiguro. And I had to read this in my first year at university. I don't remember it that well anymore, but it was delightful. A guy who's like a butler or something retires and he goes touring around trying to sort of like relive his life and relive memories or something. I feel like that's what happened. Let's read the back. In the summer of 1956, Stevens, the ageing butler of Darlington Hall, embarks on a leisurely holiday that will take him deep into the English countryside and into his past. So it was a holiday rather than retirement. But I'd got the right sort of idea going. So it's a haunting tale of lost causes and a lost love. The Remains of the Day continues Ishiguro's now celebrated evocation of life between the walls in a great English house. Within those walls can be heard ever more distinct echoes of the violent upheavals spreading across Europe. So yeah, I had to read this in my first year, as I said, and I looked at the cover when I was having to buy it, like looking at my reading list going, oh, this looks dull. You know, you shouldn't judge a book by its cover, but I really did judge this. I was like, oh my. And I was like looking at it going, well, at least it's not long. And I gave it a go and I adored this. This was just like so special to me. I want to give it a reread because, as I've proven, I don't remember it as well as I would like to. And I just thought it was really, really special. So sometimes you shouldn't judge books by their covers, especially ones off school or university reading lists. Here we have Felicia's Journey by William Trevor. This was set for me on the same reading course as The Remains of the Day. So I had to read this at a similar time. And I actually remember picking this one up while book shopping and thinking, I like the cover of this one a lot more. Expecting to love this one. As the fact that it's in this list proves, I did love it, but I also love the previous one. So again, don't go thinking that there'll only be one good book on a reading list. There might be several. I loved this too. So this was the winner of the Whitbread Book of the Year award. I must admit, I remember less of this one than I do of Remains of the Day. And it's not too shocking that I don't remember much about these, because I'd have been 19 when I read these and I'm now 32, so come on, give me a little bit of a break. They're both due rereads, definitely. So this says, "You're beautiful," Johnny told her, and so full of hope. 17-year-old Felicia crosses the Irish Sea to England to find her lover and tell him she is pregnant. Desperately searching for Johnny in the bleak post-industrial Midlands, she is instead found by Mr. Hilditch, a strange and lonely man, a collector and befriender of homeless young girls. So she's getting herself into some quite scary waters here. I loved this. Highly, highly recommend checking it out. I feel like, not so much the last book, I feel like people mention Kazuro Ishiguro, but I feel like no one ever really mentions this book or author on YouTube, and so here is my recommendation if you want to pick up something that not many other people are talking about. At school during my A-levels we had, I feel like about 10 books on a list recommended for us to read. Some of those are in this pile here. One of them I want to give a quick honourable mention to. I have not got a physical copy of, and I don't know where it's gone and it's really stressing me out. I've got the sequel over there on my bookcase. I'm almost pointing at it actually. Let's see if I can line my finger up. This is difficult. There, I think that's it. It's so difficult working out where my finger is on the camera. But yeah, the one I want to talk to you very quickly about is Angela's Ashes by Frank McCourt. That was a memoir of a guy who lived in France as a child. In France? What? Lived in Ireland as a child during like the famine and everything, and they were on really hard times, and it's a memoir, and the sequel's a memoir of once the family have moved to the US. I've not read the sequel, but the first book is the one that was on our reading list and I adored it, and I'm so desperate to give it a reread, and I've been hunting high and low for weeks and I can't find it anywhere. It's really stressing me out, so I'm probably going to have to buy a new copy. But yeah, I wanted to give that an honourable mention because I've not got it here in this pile. So the next book in this pile is Once in a House on Fire by Andrea Ashworth. This is another memoir, and this is about Andrea as a child. Her mother was in a very abusive relationship, and it's a really difficult book to read at times because you know that all this is true. Everything that happens to Andrea happens to her siblings. I can't remember how many there are because I've not read this in even longer than the other books I've shown you, but it's so accurate, it's so heart-wrenching, and it's so difficult to read, yet so important to read, and possibly my favourite of... No, it's not actually. I want to pick favourites from this pile and I can't because I just saw something that is more of a favourite than this one. I don't know. But this is fabulous. Again, it's not a book you see people talking about, so if you can get your hands on a copy of this and give it a read, highly, highly, highly recommend. Next we have a book that I talk about a lot because it's one of my favourite reads of all time, and that is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. So again, I had to read this around A-level sort of age at school, and we dissected this book little bit by little bit by little bit. And I don't think I've ever enjoyed doing so much. Normally you'd be thinking, oh God, I'm going to be spending the next however many months stuck reading this book in class all the time. We're going to know it inside out and I'm going to hate it. I couldn't get enough of learning about this book. I think it's fabulous. I think it's still an important read even today. And this was published in 1985, which makes this book my sister soulmate, my twin sister soulmate, because we were born the same year. But this is a dystopian set in a place called Gilead, and you see how society breaks down from society as we know it to the society they have in this kind of world. So the main character, Offred, that is not her real name, but everyone has been given names sort of associated with their kind of position in society. So Offred is a handmaid, and handmaids are put into people's houses to kind of create children in their houses because the kind of people that are living there, like the higher classed people, are unable to have them of their own. So yeah, it's their job to have babies. I think they're kind of like maids in the house as well, like they've got other jobs to like around the house. It's a very difficult world to live in. There are people a lot worse off than Offred, and again, I'm so due a reread of this. I've not read this since university when I did it for my dissertation in my third year. Yeah, I was that obsessed with studying this book, I decided to study it again. Here we have Birdsong by Sebastian Faulks. This was one I had to read at A-level for a war course because this is a fictional novel set around, I feel like it focuses on both wars. It starts with the First World War, and I think the Second World War maybe starts at the end of it. Or it just covers all of one war. Again, I haven't read this in so long. I can't find a blurb anywhere. Helpful, helpful. Right, we'll cheat then and we'll check chapters. So part 1, France 1910. Oh, it goes even beyond actually. Part 7, England 1979. So I had remembered correctly then, both wars are covered in this and beyond. And it's quite a kind of difficult read at times. It's also quite sex driven, like you get an insight into what the soldiers did in their downtime. You get just a really accurate representation, I feel, of what it was like to be around as a soldier in these times, what sort of things they went through. And despite being a really thick book, probably didn't feel long enough to me in some ways, because I do remember not wanting to put it down. I mean, it is just over 500 pages and it was a magical 500 for me. I feel like this book did get a lot of like attention back in the day, but it could always use a nice little boost. So go and check this out if you haven't ever read it. Next we have another A-level book for me, and this is I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou, and this is off the memoirs course that I'd already told you about, as I've already mentioned a couple of the books. So I don't remember this one very much at all. I just remember being astounded at how much I ended up loving it. And I've realised while holding this up that at a similar time I'd forgotten to pick up a book, because it is over there somewhere. I don't even know where it is, I'm not gonna lie. But at a similar time I read a similar-ish book called, that is a lot more famous, that I forgot to pick up, so I'm just going to give it an honourable mention now, of The Colour Purple by, I can't remember, how criminal, I can't remember. The cover's here anyway. So The Colour Purple, I read that at the same time as I read this one, and I adored them both. And I just wanted to give that an honourable mention. But this one as well isn't as known as The Colour Purple, but I highly recommend it. So I can't remember much about this one anymore other than the fact that I loved it, so I'll just read the back for you. Maya Angelou's 6 volumes of autobiography are a testament to the talents and resilience of this extraordinary writer. Loving the world, she also knows it's a cruelty. As a black woman, she has known discrimination and extreme poverty, but also hope and joy, achievement and celebration. In this first volume of her autobiography, Maya Angelou beautifully evokes her childhood with the grandmother in the American South of the 1930s. She learns the power of white folks at the other end of town and suffers the terrible trauma of rape by her mother's lover. So, as a very quick kind of side note to this, a lot of people are trying to read like kind of books like The Hate U Give and stuff like that right now, just like to raise awareness of how black people are still treated in the US. I feel like books like this, they probably haven't even dreamt about reading about, and I feel like it would give a really good backstory to America's past as well. And I feel bad in a way that I've only ever read this first volume of the autobiography. I do definitely need to read the rest because this is phenomenal. Here we have 1984 by George Orwell. I can't remember the first time I studied this. I'm not sure whether it was when I did my dissertation or not. I definitely did this with my dissertation along with The Handmaid's Tale, but I'm not sure whether I'd studied it at any point before. I don't think I did, but I'm not 100%. But this is a very well-known book. A lot of people have studied things like Animal Farm by Orwell at school. I didn't have to study that. I was doing Of Mice and Men instead. Oh, another one. I don't own that one, but Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck is definitely a standout one for me. You need to give that a read if you never have. Fabulous, fabulous book. But 1984 introduces you to the idea that Big Brother is watching. Society is controlled, cameras are everywhere. You have no freedom of speech, and this is very much a prediction of the way that Orwell thought society was going, in a similar way to like The Handmaid's Tale by Atwood. But again, it's been many years since I've read this, so I don't remember the details, of which there are many, many details. Ignore the fact that this cover is just awful. Absolutely awful. This is one of the best books I've ever read, and the cover just doesn't demonstrate that to me at all, in my opinion. But definitely check this out if you think that you are interested in the whole lack of freedom of speech and people watching you and your brain's kind of being twisted and whatnot. Here we have Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. I had to read this at university for a classics course, and I was kind of excited to pick this one up because it's a book that I'd heard a lot about and I'd wanted to try some Austen anyway. So I was excited for this one, but I'd also had to read a bunch of other classics on this same course, and I mean a bunch, and I'd actually struggled to get into many of them. I'd tried to read them and just like given up a few chapters and hated many others and sort of not even really tried on others still. And this was the only one, I think, that I managed to read in its entirety. And not only that, I loved in its entirety. I'm not gonna lie, there were times where I found it a little bit difficult to get through because trying to get used to the writing was quite an adjustment for me. Also, Mr. Darcy's just a bit of a prick at times. And all the same, I fell in love. And I loved this. And if you've never read it, I highly encourage you to give it a go. It's not easy going, but if you can get into it and get through first little bit or so you will start getting into the flow of the writing and it will become easier and you might love it. An easier classic to get into that I also read on that same classics course at university. No I didn't. This is a different classics course. Can't think what this one was versus that one, but it was a different course, and this is Esther Waters by George Moore, and I adored this one. I can't remember much about it at all, but it is well loved and beaten. Very few of my books look in this sort of state through being read so much, but I adored this and then made anyone and everyone I knew read it too. Because I can't remember what it's about at all, I will just quickly read the back for you. So Esther Waters is forced to leave home and become a servant in a well-to-do household. Seduced in a moment of weakness, she has to leave her position, and the novel charts her poignant story of poverty and hardship. First lying in the hospital, then service as a wet nurse, and even the workhouse as she struggles to look after her child. Adapting the French literary practices of sexual frankness and social exploration to the British climate, Moore produced his masterpiece in Esther Waters. And like, literally just reading that back bit has refreshed so much of it in my head. This is a fantastic read and you need to read it if you've never read it. And if you've never heard of it, definitely get a copy. I highly recommend it. It's not like you have to buy a copy in this day and age, just go download a free ebook version of it. Finally here we had to have a bit of Shakespeare in here somewhere. This is my favourite Shakespeare play by Miles. This is Othello. I studied a lot of Shakespeare at school and also at university, and this one is like my standout favourite by Miles, just because I really love the character of Iago, and what a stirrer he is. And I really love the whole distrust thing between Othello and Desdemona, and I can't praise this book enough. I think that this is a really fantastic play. If you don't want to read it because you don't enjoy plays, I don't blame you. There is a film that has got Lawrence Fishburne, is that his name in? I'm sure that's his name. The black guy from The Matrix. That's his name, right? I'll put a picture of him here in case I've got his name wrong. But there is a film version with him in, and I remember having to watch that at the same time as reading this and really enjoying it. Or even better, if you can get yourself to a play where this is being performed, even better. I have seen a play of this and I really enjoyed it. I feel like I was about 16 at the time, 17. I saw it at like Nottingham Theatre or something, and I thought it was great. And I just want more people to love this play, because here's a shocker. My partner Luke, which many of you will be familiar with by now, not really into reading an awful lot despite pretending that he is sometimes. He also really adores this play. So two completely different people love this. There's a good sign for you. And that's the end of this ridiculous pile. I'm sure, as I did mention some honourable mentions in here, I've probably still forgot some other books that were phenomenal and that I highly recommend. But if you see any of these books come up on your school or university reading lists, don't dread them. Be excited for them. You will probably love some of them. Just give them a fair chance. Obviously, there were many, many, many more books that I was meant to read at various stages of my education and didn't, because I didn't like the look of them. So don't be disheartened if you kind of find yourself skipping a few here, skipping a few there. It's actually a really natural and normal thing to do. I doubt that everyone reads everything they are meant to read at school. But thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know what some of your favourites were that you had to study in the comments down below. I would absolutely love to know, and maybe you'll refresh my memory of some that I forgot about. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe by clicking the image of me if you want to see more book reviews and other bookish content from me, and I will see you soon. Bye bye!